Welcome to SEC Sports Roundtable. We've got a partial full roundtable here today. We've got our esteemed co-host Drew Young missing in action. He might still be stuck in Vegas. You know, he might have had such a good time he didn't want to come home. But he has a annual guys trip to Vegas, and so that's thrown the schedule off a little bit, and he was not able to join us. So we do apologize that he's not here, especially since we have a South Carolina fan across the way where Drew would have normally been sitting, so we could have had some great interaction there because a Mississippi State Kentucky fan face each other on the opposite side of the table. So I want to welcome Marc Wisner to the roundtable this evening. Good evening, Marc.
Thanks, sir.
How are you?
Very good.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. I think you were telling me off air you were a little under the weather, so thank you for toughing this one out and coming out and joining us.
Yeah.
And I have the Bulldog across from me. Good evening, Blair.
Good evening. Excited to be here, especially without Drew, so we can take our shots at him.
Yeah, I kind of wish he was here.
Yeah, you're true. Yeah,
it would be.
We'll have our fun anyway.
Yeah, even I wouldn't hold anything back if he was or wasn't here. So.
In the state of UT athletics, I would go to Vegas as well. So.
Yeah, maybe they need to go to Vegas every week. All right. Well, as normal, we're going to tell you how to find us, and thank you so much for joining us at the SEC Sports Roundtable. You can find us on Stitcher. That's an app on your Android or iPhone. Hope you. We won't go into last week's debacle on my part with that, but find us on Stitcher. Subscribe to us there as well as on iTunes. We are there. Listen to us there. Like us. Subscribe. Send some reviews. Let's get us up at the very top there on the iTunes. And then also our website, SECSportsRoundtable.com. For those that do not like to type, you can just go to SECSRT.com. We're also on Facebook at SECSRT, SEC Sports Roundtable, and then Twitter is SECSRT. So look for updates. We try to update through the week, different news and information, let you know when our podcasts are out. We also do a video that we put on YouTube, so you can check for that. That doesn't always happen as quick as the podcast because, you know, it's basically a one-man shop in the edit department, and he's not that good. So it takes a little longer to get all that together and get the audio matched up and back out. And, you know, doing it from a home, Comcast, I'll just say, really likes to throttle your bandwidth because you start that upload and it just gets slower and slower. And, you know, 7-8 hours later, I've uploaded an hour and 15-minute podcast on the video. So thanks to Comcast for such tremendous and reliable bandwidth there. You know, that's what you get for doing commercial stuff in a consumer place. But, you know, we're not getting paid for this, so to me it's still consumer grade. And I hope the quality is not consumer grade that we're giving out. But we're going to start off with the news. There's not a whole lot out there, but SEC Media Days is this week for basketball. So, you know, we had our basketball preseason podcast just last week. So if you haven't got that and you've just been catching the football ones, look for an extra podcast. We had 2 podcasts out last week, one of them being a basketball podcast. And so we've got, you know, we did our preseason picks, and the media kicks off Media Day a couple days earlier, and they got the preseason media poll as well as first team and second team SEC was announced today as well. Blair, I think you got that information in front of you, or you had some stuff you wanted to talk about. And I know that as a Kentucky fan, you know, Kentucky took first place in the media poll with 18 first place votes. Vandy had a respectable 4. And, you know, I mentioned off air that Florida somehow snuck 1 vote in there for first place.
That's right. I think it actually matched up. The top 6 were what we had the other day in our preview. So Kentucky, Vandy, Florida, then Alabama, Mississippi State, and I think Arkansas came in 6th, if I'm not mistaken.
You're correct.
So I think that that highlights kind of where we were in our preview the other day. And I think the interesting thing was the first team and second team had 11 players, and 3 of them, or actually 9 of the 11 came from 3 teams. So Kentucky and Vandy and Florida are essentially carrying the boat on that. So I think Mississippi State and Alabama had the other two bringing those in. So right consistent right there across the top in the top five.
Yeah, it's all pretty strong. It really went just like you said, because through the podcast, I remember you saying that Ole Miss could actually flip-flop with Georgia, and that's exactly what the media said when they did their votes. We'll round it out. So the last 6 was Ole Miss, Georgia, LSU, Auburn, Tennessee, and South Carolina. So that's the full rundown on the media days. Lots of information is going to come out come Thursday. So I know when we have our next podcast, we'll have a lot of basketball information to throw out there, because there's a lot of information that gets spewed out. Hundreds and hundreds of reporters are there asking any question you can think of to the coaches, and some players are there. So there's going to be some new information to be handed out there, and we'll cover some more of that as we get that from media days. But that's really all that's going on in the SEC, aside from football. There was some news on the NCAA front with Mark Emmert, and I think, Blair, you've got some information about that.
Yeah, I think he, I think just really is meeting with some advisory boards that kind of go over some rules and regulations for the NCAA, and I think it came out, I believe, yesterday that he is putting out there a $2,000 grant, which is kind of that. I guess that buffer that you kind of heard the buzzword, which was what did we actually call it? The cost of attendance, right? And so between what really is covered in their scholarship and really what it actually costs to go to the school, they know that there's a number there, and I think this is just kind of the first step into kind of alleviating some of those things that that come with the little extras with tuition and books and all those kind of things, just to kind of help buffer that. So that's just one thing that came out. So of course it's going to hit the news. They think it's a stipend or something to that effect. So we'll see where it goes from there.
I mean, is $2,000 enough? I mean, if you're a 4-star recruit coming into a college, and under the table, I think they're getting a lot more than $2,000 a semester.
Yeah, I mean, there's still all kinds of stuff that goes on with regards to that. I do think that anything actually helps. But I think as a college student, if you're going by the rules, I remember being in college, $2,000 gets you a long ways in a semester or so. So yeah, I mean,
play
so
college ball. So
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just a little bit of extra that could take care of some things that you don't have to actually come out of pocket for, or a parent doesn't, or a booster, so they can actually use that towards something else,
Yeah. I mean,
new rims.
I mean, I think it helps. It doesn't solve the problem. I think it's good they're acknowledging that they haven't changed the rule in like 25 years. So it's just saying, hey, stuff's more expensive. It'd be nice if these guys can go out and see a movie or something. So give them a couple $1,000. Like Blair said, maybe it keeps some of the guys from taking money under the table or whatever. Because in college you can make it stretch. So
yeah, but
it's good to see them acknowledge it at least.
I appreciate the fact that they're trying to throw some money out there, but the individuals that are breaking these rules, and the ones that have gotten caught, at least that you hear about, they're not the middle of the road players that are making this money stretch the way it is. It's your star players, and is $2,000 enough to keep them from wanting to get tattoos or selling jerseys or having their parents live in really nice houses a block from them?
Yeah, well, I think the NCAA is not. I don't think that they're thinking that that's not going to happen. I think what they're thinking is that, number one, if they do something like this, they got to do it across the board. So how do you do it from a fair standpoint and an economic standpoint to where schools can actually afford this, and that everybody, no matter if you're the backup punter and you're the starting quarterback, you essentially are getting the same thing. It's one of those types of things where I still think it's not going to solve any of the problems that a kid that might go get tattoos and do all that type of stuff that we saw. I think that's still going to be out there, and the temptation is going to be there. But I think this helps a lot of the other things. It's just a start. It's something that helps buffer some things.
Yeah, I mean, you think of it from the NCAA perspective, they'll probably tell you there isn't a problem, right? Going on there is. So it's kind of their way of maybe acknowledging that, hey, let's give all these kids a little bit more money because cost of living or cost of attendance is higher, and then, even more reason if we catch somebody cheating to bring the hammer down. But, the NCAA certainly is going to come out and go, yeah, all these schools are cheating, so we're going to give these guys a couple $1,000 more. They're just, it's. I think they're recognizing and acknowledging that a lot of the guys that don't come from much what they get now is not enough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think we can debate, what is the actual dollar amount and what's the right answer for hours and hours, and there's no right answer there. So,
and I think this is just a start of a dialogue because I think the biggest number that we were talking before we started this was each school probably has a different number of what it actually does to kind of get them to that cost of attendance. So they're going to have to actually come up with a number, which is this 2,000 that they're starting with. So I think this is just the start of a dialogue that's going to kind of go on. But I think the one thing you can say about Mark Emmert is that he's got a game plan. He knows that things need to be simplified, and he's at least trying to do something about it, which is to say it really hasn't happened in the NCAA in a while. So at least he's acknowledging those things.
This brought up another thing. I just came into my thought process. Could this be one of the ways the NCAA is trying to be preemptive? Because, with the super conferences on the horizon, there could be a opportunity where the NCAA ceases to exist in the football world. And is this one way he's trying to get in there to say, hey, we're relevant, we belong, we need to be here even when the super conferences happen?
That's a good question. I mean,
I just popped into my head.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those deals where I think we could go down that way, but I think there's so much uncertainty on what's going to happen with super conferences. I mean, I heard the other day that there's rumblings about somebody that's actually trying to start a national conference, which is 32 teams across the country. So you'd have a West, a South. It's not any of the BCS conferences, but it's all the SMUs. It's basically the Mountain West and the Conference USA and all them. So there's all kinds of stuff that's happening with regards to conferences and what the NCAA's impact is going to be on that. But I think that the NCAA understands that they've got to simplify the rules, and that they've got to do some things. And I think the money's getting too great for them to not go ahead and get some of those things taken care of.
Well, that's the first I've heard about that super conference, but that could be a way for those second tier teams to exist after all this is said and done. Because I've talked at length that your University of Southern Florida's and your UCFs, and even here locally MTSU,
right.
They've all in the last 15 years gone to Division I. They don't have that rich heritage of an Alabama or an LSU that's had a program that's been here for since the dawn of college football. To have a fan base, so that they've had to grow that organically, and that takes time. So that might be a way for those to exist, because I could see where those would have trouble in the super conference world that we've looked at. So we'll keep moving on, because we can discuss and talk about this stuff all night, and everyone has an opinion, and what they say about those. So
all I'll say is I might agree with you that it's an olive branch in the NCAA saying, hey, we're here to wreck, but there's so much else screwed up with the NCAA that maybe it's a step in the right direction with those guys, but I think that is past. Everyone realizes the NCAA in its current state, cannot enforce, and like Blair said, is just too complicated.
Well, let's look at the games this week. I think we're going to start off with a team that's had a lot of trouble scoring all season, we'll say, and it looked like it took a Jacksonville State coming up to Lexington for those roles to get reversed a little bit. And I won't say I watched every play of this, but I watched a considerable amount of it. They had a run game from a number of different individuals that actually got to touch the ball, which was refreshing, even because they lost Clemens a week or so ago. He's out with knee surgery, so he's not. He's there. He was their leading running back. He's not there anymore. So we had Kashyyyk Williams step in and really be serviceable. I mean, 22 carries for 148 yards.
Who is Kashyyyk Williams?
He's a junior. He's been there 3 years and has
wow.
So I mean, it's not like he's a freshman that came off the board. Newton was fairly effective. He didn't throw the ball a whole lot, only 16 times, but 10 for 16. That's better than 50%. And when you get above 50% with Morgan Newton, you're a happy person here in Wildcat land, because you don't see that kind of throwing percentage. Also, no interceptions.
That's efficient.
Yeah, I think the couple things I took out of it, number one, you had a running game. So the kid goes, Koshik, is that how you said Koshik Williams?
You would
22 carries for 148 yards. And then you have Morgan Newton, who carries it 12 times for 75. And that means he only has to pass 16 times for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think what you can kind of take out of it is your defense is pretty good if you can run the ball and not go 3 and out, which is really what's happened, and they were rested a little bit. But the defense kind of got the game started off and just completely destroyed that quarterback and runs a fumble in for 40 yards to start the game, and you go up 7-0. So had a good start.
Well, for whom the cowbell tolls, and we've got Mississippi State, Kentucky does this weekend, and they asked me to look at some things, and that's exactly what I said in my post to them, is that the problem with Kentucky is that they've got a really good defense, but when the offense turns around and goes 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, they can't stay on the field and be effective. They've got to have time to catch their breath and get their legs back. And you saw when they had some effective offense that their defense was able to come in, get a couple pass interceptions, run back some touchdowns, become extremely effective, change field position, and give Kentucky a really good shot at scoring. They had short fields, and that's how they were able to score and do so well against Jacksonville State. So, yes, it's Jacksonville State, but you've got to look at some positives from Kentucky's standpoint.
Ole Miss would say it's Jacksonville State too. So Jacksonville State, I mean, they're not a bad program. I mean, they're 5-2. And they've got that little quirky offense that is kind of interesting. But I think the other thing, not to steal your thunder here, Mark, but the biggest thing that Kentucky, to add on top of all the stuff that we just mentioned, was they turned the ball over so much the first 6 games. Yeah. And they've cut that out the last 2 games somewhat, and especially this last game. And when you start doing those things, it just makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah, they like these Gamecocks a lot better than the other Gamecocks. I'm looking at the stat line too. I had no clue what Sean Ely plays for Jacksonville State, but
I was getting ready to talk about that. I mean, last year he lit Kentucky up. I mean,
and I'm looking at this: 16 carries for 120 yards, and I didn't watch the game, but I'm looking at that going, man, Kentucky must have dominated, but 16 carries for 120 yards is running the ball.
How does he not have more than 16 carries?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like maybe Kentucky played a little ball control and ran the ball and managed the clock.
Well, you put them down, really, and they had to go away from that run game.
Yeah.
I mean, you go away from that when you're down so many points. I mean, that's one thing that was becoming effective because he was very effective. I mean, 16 for 120. That's not bad numbers. Yeah. He didn't get in the end zone. But that's not 25 to 30 carries was what you would, if you were Jacksonville State, that's what you were targeting, to have the ball in his hand that many times. So I think, all being said there, I think that's effective. So
yeah, I'm just looking at the number of rushes for Kentucky. It just sounds like they played keep away and kind of just dominated. Played good defense too. So and Morgan Newton seeing 10 for 16, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's got to make you happy. So
yeah, now as a Kentucky fan, there's. You've got to look for positives because there's not been many to talk about this season. And, coming into this next stretch of 4 games, they've got, 3 teams with losing records and 1 that has a winning record, but they have as much trouble scoring as Kentucky does, and that's Vanderbilt. And so, there's some positive to go into the end of the season now. Can we win 2 more to go be bowl eligible? It's asking a whole lot, but, but –
you always find a way.
I tell you what.
But so you're saying
a win and not turning over the ball and running it cures a lot of things. And all of a sudden, you're looking at it going, even though it's Jacksonville State, you've got some type of energy, it's all it takes. And, 3 weeks ago, it wasn't that story.
Yeah, as a Kentucky fan, I'm sitting here going, so you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say, I think you said the line we saw was a pick. So it's not like people went into this game going, Kentucky's going to blow them out. I mean, 38-14 on a pick 'em line is getting it done. So.
Yeah. And so after we went with the pick 'em, there was some variations there because Jacksonville State being Division II.
Yeah.
So some quirks happen there, but still.
I don't think anyone expected Kentucky to win 38-14. I guess
that's right.
That's a good performance.
So we'll move on to the next game, and actually to me this I think it surprised everyone because everybody from our picks did not pick Ole Miss to have a chance in this game. Everybody was so impressed with Arkansas's offense, and 29 points is not that's not a lot of points from Arkansas standpoint, but it's not like a couple of touchdowns. They did a pretty decent job scoring, but they let Ole Miss stay in that ball game and kept it close.
Yeah, it was obviously it was shocking. I came in and it was 17-0 at 17-7 at halftime, but I walked in when it was 17-0, so which was a shocker. But when you take a look at it, there's becoming a trend with Arkansas, especially in early games, is that they just start out slow and they just don't even wake up until halftime. They did it against Texas A&M. They did it 2 weeks ago. I can't remember who they were playing, and they did it against this Ole Miss team. So they've done it 3 times now, and they've got such firepower that they can just roll off 29 points like they did against Ole Miss. Ole Miss has found an answer at quarterback in Randall Mackey. He gives them an opportunity. He's a better passer than I thought he was, and he can get out of the pocket.
That was Auburn. How could we forget that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
It sure was.
Yep.
And so it's one of those deals where he gives them an opportunity. Their defense really played well the first half, but then, I don't know what they're doing. It was kind of interesting. As a Mississippi State fan, I was glad to see it. But, they just had some ridiculous play calls in the second half. You're tossing the ball. Arkansas gives you the ball, a fumble at the 1-yard line, fixing to go in to score to put this game away. And then all of a sudden Ole Miss comes out the next play, and they toss a sweep 6 yards back in the end zone to 180-pound running back, and he just gets blown up 5 yards in the end zone for a safety. So they lost all momentum. It was a really big turning point. They had a key drop by a freshman wide receiver who had a really good day, but he had one bad drop. They're making headway, but they just have big lapses. But Arkansas starts off slow, and they just, they got the offense. But, I'm looking at Tyler Wilson. He's got 13 for 28 for 232. That's just not. He's got no touchdowns, no interceptions. He didn't have a big day.
Yeah.
And there, if it wasn't for Adams and that one little slant pass that he takes to the house, almost to the house for 73 yards, they were hurting there for a second.
Yeah. You expect Tyler Wilson to have no less than 350. If you have less than 350 from him, you've had a bad game, and at least 2 TD passes. But they squeaked by, and sometimes you need one of those games where you just squeak by to be able to make it. And they've still got a shot in the West, and I keep saying that, but not the way they played Saturday against Ole Miss. They're going to have a completely different approach the last couple games here to keep moving forward and have a shot there. But they broke the top 10 in the BCS standings. What are they now, 9th? Yep. I believe. Yeah. So they're knocking on the door, and we can talk about that on the week when we look at the week ahead. How some of that might shake out with the BCS, because you've got a surprise this week, at least. And it wasn't in the SEC, but it does affect who from the SEC might play, and that was that loss to Oklahoma State. K-Mac, and were you expecting Oklahoma to win?
When's that?
Oklahoma.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think everyone was.
Oklahoma was.
Okay, Oklahoma will pull this one out.
Yeah, you always thought. Up into the very end, you thought they had a shot at that, and they didn't. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma State's now sneaking in there at 3.
Yeah.
But their last game of the season's at Oklahoma. I'm sorry, they host Oklahoma, I think.
Yeah, but they still got K-State, and they also still got Baylor this weekend.
Yeah. So
watch out for that.
So a
lot of movement still coming.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of room for Arkansas to sneak up there, but they're going to have to keep winning and do it a little more impressively than they did against Ole Miss.
Yeah. So Blair, I know you're trying to be nice to Ole Miss and trying to find positives, which is good of you, but I'm going to chalk that up to more of Arkansas just didn't show up, and Ole Miss is still a complete dumpster fire. You're going to have those games like Shane said, but you're still ranked number 9. You have one loss to, one of the top 2 teams in the nation. They ran the ball with Dennis Johnson. they had an off day throwing the ball. They still pulled out the win. You know, like you said, Ole Miss is Ole Miss. They're going to figure out a way to screw it up. You know, it sounds like they did some good things on defense maybe, but you know, that's just one where you go on Ole Miss, you win, you know you're going to win. You probably didn't beat them as bad as you thought you would, and then you just regroup for next week and try to keep rolling. So.
I mean, to add to that, I mean, that's Houston Nutt's got 10 straight SEC losses. So that's a big number. You know, Ed Orgeron had 8 and they fired him. You know, they've had 2 9 or longer I guess consecutive 9 losses in the SEC straight, and Houston Nutt's been a part of 2 of them. So they're on him pretty bad, but you know he's got them held hostage right now with a huge buyout, and he's also got an AD that everybody hates. So he's got that going for him.
There is nothing good about. See, now you got to roll out all the stats you wanted to roll out about their losing streak. See, teed them up. No, I mean, yeah, if they win an SEC game, I'll tip my cap to them. But until they do, you know, I'm not going to find any positives with Ole Miss, right? I mean, good for those kids to show up. I know those guys work hard, and they're probably in a bad situation right now that isn't their doing, which is unfortunate. But, you know, with that forward Rebels thing you're showing me and the AD and all that stuff, I mean, you can't fault the kids for that, but that's just, it's a mess. So, you know, Arkansas went in there, you know, crazy stuff going on. Ole Miss pulled out a win, you know, got some things to improve on, and then you go into next week and you try to keep it going. Because like Shane said, if you can just keep winning, who knows what will happen.
Well, they've got one more win this season, possibly 2. They've got Auburn, Kentucky, Louisiana Tech, LSU, and Mississippi State.
I see no wins.
La Tech, I'm going to tell you right now.
I see 0 wins.
I think they have a better shot of winning an SEC game than they do at La Tech.
Ooh.
La Tech took us to overtime, and
he's talking about Wildcats.
No,
they're not beating. No, they could beat. They could beat Kentucky, but
that's at Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Oh.
It depends on whether or not
they're
Kentucky
beat La Tech.
Well, here's the thing:
because we went to overtime with them, and they're going to be like, okay, we got to take these kids serious.
They're not beating La Tech. Yeah. It depends on whether Kentucky has a basketball game that day or not. If the fans show up.
Ooh, it is a Saturday, November 5th. There might be a basketball.
Maybe they'll go to football then basketball.
Oh, yeah. They'll stagger it. Yeah.
And you know, will they have the triple threat with Keeneland still running? I think.
That's true. Maybe the fans.
That starts this weekend.
Maybe the fans will be so fired up to see the basketball team that night. They'll come cheer their butt off at the football game. There's no wins there. There's no. Let me put it a different way. They might be favored against Louisiana Tech, but that's it. They're underdogs in every other game. And after seeing Tech play Mississippi State, they're going to beat them.
No, that's true.
Yeah, we went to overtime. We had to throw a touchdown pass in overtime to beat La Tech.
To see what happens.
Not like we're good or anything. But.
Now,
I'd love to see forward Rebels if they do lose to La Tech. That's going to be crazy.
A 2-win Ole Miss team, is Houston Nutt gone regardless?
They got bigger issues, man.
It's right
now it's the AD's the issue, because and a smart Ole Miss fan knows this, that if you fire Houston Nutt for some reason, then there's not going to be anybody else to go work for Boone, who's the AD. And so, or Baboon, as they call him.
Yeah, but isn't that like, that's Ole Miss's MO, right?
Yeah.
Fire a good coach, think you're better than you are, get turned down by like 10 guys, and actually Nutt fell in their lap.
Yeah.
I mean, he was
looking to get out.
Fantastic hire at the time, and now he's a disaster, but nobody's going to want that job.
Yeah.
What did we just not have the same thing happen at Tennessee? Basically, I mean, the AD's gone. Now it was not in succession, but I mean, the as Reagan says, trickle down economics. It was trickling back up and got the AD at the end. It was in reverse order.
Yeah.
But you had a new basketball coach, new football coach, and a new AD in a season.
Yeah.
At Tennessee, I mean. Do you not just clean house and start all over with the AD and a new coach?
Well, I think that's what will happen, but they got to get rid of the AD first. And the problem is, if you pay Houston Nutt and his assistants off, it's $11 million this year.
How do you get in that hole?
That's the reason they need to get rid of an AD. Wow. $11 million. That's a big number when you've got a $45 million total budget. It's not like it's Tennessee, and you got over $100 million budget.
Yeah.
Now, I think that there's about 4 guys over there that can scratch that off, and they'll do it in a heartbeat. They will if they got the AD gone. But we can sit here and talk about this all day. It gets me all fired up.
Yeah, enough Ole Miss dumpster fire. Yeah.
Well,
Lots of bourbon in the Grove.
I do like that you tried to find some positives there. That was
Well, I'm scared to death because we got special unis for the Egg Bowl, and they're just going to roll in there. You haven't beat them 3 times in a row since the 40s. So, I mean, it's basically it's lining straight up for them just to walk into Starkville and wax us. So
yeah.
I'm trying not to go there yet.
Well, one team that I think Ole Miss we talked about they would face was Vanderbilt, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Well, they've already gotten beat by
They've
them.
gotten beat by Vanderbilt. That's right.
Smoked.
They did.
Bad.
Well, we'll talk about the Vanderbilt Commodores. The 4-3 Vanderbilt Commodores winning record halfway through the season. Hats off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here looking at the stats from the game. Vanderbilt, who we would all say now roll up 530 total yards on Army. Jordan Rogers goes 10 for 27, 186 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. You see that line, you go, that's not that great. There's a reason why he sat behind Larry Smith forever, but Larry Smith would probably have the same stats.
Worse.
Yeah. His completion percentage would be lower.
But then you look at
lost
this.
the Georgia game because of the first few series Larry Smith played.
Right.
I mean,
but Jordan Rogers, 18 carries for 96 yards. Zach Stacy, 21 carries, 198 yards. That's getting it done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 2 guys. I mean, your quarterback gets almost 100 yards. He throws for almost 200. He throws 2 picks, which you got to figure out what's wrong with that against Army. You shouldn't be throwing 2 picks against Army. That's just but I mean, Vanderbilt, I mean,
correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't one of the reasons they liked Larry Smith is because he was versatile and could run the ball. And I mean, Rogers took a book out of his brother's playbook there. And
well, I think what's really happening here is I think that they would have gone to Rogers a lot earlier. I'm wondering if his arm strength and his just complete health as from an arm standpoint, because he had that shoulder surgery.
He missed most of spring with the shoulder.
And
he had surgery. And
I think the last 2 months he's just gotten stronger and stronger and stronger to the point that where they felt comfortable actually having – I mean, I think they were just forced to go to him. But that's what a couple of people have said was that earlier in the year he just didn't have the ability to make some throws that Larry Smith could make. Even though we can question when he throws the ball and where he throws it, but he could at least get it there, and I think Rogers now can do that, and I think he just gives them a better option.
So you think maybe part of that was he wasn't quite at 100%, and they weren't wanting to come out and say Rogers isn't healthy enough to be our number 1 yet?
What it tells me is that I think James Franklin's pretty smart guy, and he's 4-3 in his first year at Vanderbilt. And he just rolled up 530 yards with a quarterback from his first start. So I'm hoping he was hurt the previous 7 starts.
Well, no, I mean,
6.
I respect Frank because Smith is a 5th-year senior, and everybody knows he's not that good. Jordan Rogers isn't Aaron Rodgers. He's not even Connor Shaw or whatever right now. You never know, but.
I have the most respect for Smith because he's went in there week after week with a Vanderbilt offensive line that's let him just get destroyed.
Took a beating, and
he ended up on the mat. I mean, you would have thought it was a wrestling match as much as he was down on the grass some games. I mean, he was hobbling off the field. It's a wonder a stretcher didn't take him out half the time. Some of those licks he was taking. I mean, he's. I mean, you got to give him heart. His heart's the size of.
Well, and Vandy, what they started 3-0, 3-0, 4-0. I mean, he was playing, so you're not going to pull him when you're winning, no matter how. And then it was really weird. It was like the Steven Garcia thing where Larry Smith literally would go out on the field, and you could tell he didn't think he was going to complete a pass, and the guy he couldn't do anything. Like that first quarter against Georgia was a mess, and they finally put in Rodgers. And this could take a while because I think Rodgers first year JUCO transfer or whatever. So, I mean. 530 yards is 530 yards, plus the defense. I mean, they're playing well. They're creating turnovers, and if you get a guy like Rodgers that can just make a couple plays and manage a game. The other thing is they had, they had a 40-plus yard touchdown pass, 55-yard touchdown run. I I mean, Vandy making big plays. Come on, like
they sure
great,
did. Yeah,
right?
they got a 43-yard reception and a 55-yard run by Stacy. So, and that's good to see. Zach Stacy. I mean, they've needed something like that this year, and it's been kind of hard for them to come by. But their defense is legit. I mean, and whatever his name is, Shoots or whatever that came from the little tiny college over there. I mean, he's just doing things with them that's pretty unique. So,
yeah, I'm happy for West.
If you're Vanderbilt, you got to be excited, man.
Oh yeah,
and they're 4-0 at home.
Yeah.
So they're playing Arkansas this weekend to go 5-0 at home for what? It's got to be the first time in 30 years.
Wait,
right?
they lost Georgia.
Did they lose to home?
Georgia, yeah. I think that was home.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah, just totally.
Still, Vandy being over 500 at home is, they're in their
Man, that was a good stat I thought I had. Man.
Yeah.
He just blew that one out from me. That's good.
Well, they should have beat Georgia, so I wish you had your stat.
They spotted them, 13 points?
He just handed them that one. But anyway, I mean, in the recruiting class they got, they're just it's exciting, man.
26 in the nation right now, I think.
Yeah.
If they're recruiting, I mean,
number one player in the state of Tennessee.
It's there's lots
number
to be
one player in Wisconsin or somewhere.
Yeah.
Lots to be happy for to be in West End. There's 2 more wins on the schedule now. Who they are, I don't know.
Tennessee, Drew.
It's quite possible. We'll talk about Tennessee when we get to them, but that's a program that it's starting to come loose a little bit there. But they've got Arkansas this week, Florida. Who knows what you're going to get with Florida these days? Kentucky, Tennessee, and then Wake Forest.
Yeah, what games are at home? I know Wake Forest is away.
Just Kentucky and Arkansas.
Yeah, they've had the last 3 counting this week at home.
Kentucky's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a game that they've got to win if they want to get bowl eligible, first of all. And that's going to be a tough game for Kentucky. So that's a make or break.
That's the only game Vandy's going to be favored in.
Yeah.
And then they gotta pull out Tennessee or Wake. I don't think they beat Florida, Arkansas.
Wake's they're kind of a head case. They come up and beat Florida State, which you think is a big win, and then and then they're kind of up and down. So you never know.
You don't know which Wake Forest you're going to get.
I think Vandy matches up pretty well with them with the way Wake plays. So.
I mean, if I'm a Vandy fan, and I know we've had some Vandy guys on here, I'm totally excited about, West End. I mean, I would just be fired up.
Yeah. Oh, I'm completely with you, except for my love for Kentucky, because
that's a big game for both.
That's
right?
bottom dwellers. Yeah. If you look at it right now, it's potentially a huge game for both programs, and now will that serve any weight with CBS and have a decent time slot? Or is that going to be the 11:21 game because it's Vandy, Kentucky at Kentucky? But both of those teams potentially could be fighting for a chance at a bowl game.
Joker coaching for his job.
I don't think so. I think.
They aren't firing him.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to Mitch Barnhart before Big Blue Madness, he was in complete support of Joker. He said, they've got this off week to work on some things, but you look at what disappeared from Kentucky's program, and I know as a Kentucky fan, I've been on this program bashing them and about how bad they are, but that blog post made me go back and look at some numbers, and it was just crazy. And some of the stuff I was able to find, 83% of their offense disappears, through graduation or going to the NFL. And through 5 players, and I was being generous by adding a 5th player. It was really 4 that took most of that. You also had a freshman quarterback that they had teed up to probably the way Newton's played definitely would be the starter right now. But he got mad because he didn't play in that bowl game where Hartline had to set for being just stupid and getting drunk and hitting somebody. So he does that. He sets out that bowl game. Now this freshman, it gets mad because he didn't get any playing time in this bowl game, and he transfers. He's to some junior college now. But he was a really good prospect for Kentucky, and so since Newton wasn't getting it done, they didn't have a second option at quarterback.
Yeah.
So I mean, they've had a few things that really didn't go their way, and Joker Phillips can can recruit. He's got T. Martin there who for as good as Joker is, I think T is even better. I mean, that guy is just on
the one that kept your whole class together. Yeah. So,
I mean he is on the road. He is in prospects' homes. I mean, he is the face right now of the recruiting on Kentucky. And Joker was the same way when Rich Brooks was there. I mean, your head coach doesn't do the bulk of that recruiting. You got to look to your assistants. And so they've got capable people to do that. So it's going to take them, just a little time to rebuild. And, we're back to going to bowl games.
How long has he been there now?
This is his second year.
2 years, okay.
But now he was a coach in waiting. I couldn't give you the number of years. He was there under Rich Brooks.
But I thought he was there longer for 2 years.
Yeah.
Because I was about to be a smart ass and go, well, you got to recruit behind those guys, right? That's still Joker's job. But if he's only been there 2 years, and he's got a couple more years easy.
Yeah, and but before that, I think he was with maybe 12 years. I don't know. I couldn't. I'd be crazy to try to tell you how long he was with the program, but he's always been a Kentucky guy. I mean, he played there, so I mean, he's got so much going for him, and there's still so much unknown. Kentucky's going to give him a chance.
You have to for sure. So, he was at South Carolina a couple years. I can't remember when. I don't know when Holtz was there. Maybe I don't remember. Wide receivers coach or something. I liked him. He can recruit.
Well, now that we've went back and talked about Kentucky again, you get Drew.
See, I get both of you guys going.
If you don't get Drew here, I can talk about Kentucky and not feel bad, because I'll get the guilt trip because I'll start bashing Tennessee and it's all one-sided in his world. But here I am just bashing Drew for not being here. Drew, I'm so sorry when you listen to this, but it is. We're going to move on to the LSU Auburn game, and really we're going to talk about the next two games we're talking about are just two dominant programs in the country, not just the SEC. And that's going to be LSU and Alabama. And there's no way to say not.
Yeah.
They're not.
I mean, LSU, I don't know, man. It's just something about them. But, watching this game, I mean, you're sitting there without Ware. You got the suspensions. And you're sitting there going, okay, well, they're going to bring in Blue and they're going to bring in Michael Ford, and then this Kenny Hilliard, who is a true freshman, takes the ball at the 9-yard line and runs over the whole defense of Auburn into the end zone. And I was just like, who's this guy? And then he
pull him out of the stands.
Yeah, he got 10 carries and 65 yards. And so they just replenished. But the one thing I got out of this game is Les Miles – he's just going to do things his way, and how he's worked Jordan Jefferson in with Lee is pretty magical, man. And how they're both playing. But Jordan Jefferson comes into the game. I don't know if y'all saw this, but the touchdown pass he threw Randall,
that was sweet.
I mean, is there a better pass that you've seen in college football?
Maybe
and guess what? Lee throws it right. I'm sitting there watching like a replay. But I mean, Randall doesn't even have to hold his hands out, dead stride. I mean, two of the best passes I've seen in several years.
It reminded me of that old Michael Jordan, was it Larry Bird, where they were playing horse? Anything you can do, I can do better. Because I think Lee's was about 5-10 yards longer, and it was just picture perfect as well, right there in stride. It's amazing. And what this really says, and this is what the problem is for the teams like Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Kentucky, right now, Florida, is its depth. I mean, LSU has, the cupboard is not bare. You've got Matthew, Ware. I mean, they're out, two huge names in their program, and LSU doesn't skip a beat.
Yeah, like 18 of their two deep, 22 on defense are underclassmen. Then they bring in number 13, whatever his name was, that's taking the spot of the Simon kid, or whichever one was the second one that nobody knew about. He just comes in, intercepts it, takes it to the house. Has a couple of pass deflections. So they just put somebody in there and they just do the exact same thing. It's crazy.
Yeah. Here's my favorite LSU stat, and I think this still holds. I sent it to you. So before that, though, what you were saying, if you just look at the quarterbacks, 16 for 23, 200 plus yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. If LSU's doing that to you and running the ball and playing defense, I mean, you look at Auburn, they had 34 carries for 87 yards. And Auburn runs the football. I mean, that's just what they do. But my favorite stat, I'm looking at the turnover line. Looks like Auburn had 2 turnovers, LSU 0. They were number 1 in turnover margin in the SEC, plus 13, I think, last week. And I think South Carolina was second at like plus 6. They've turned the ball over three times the entire year.
Wow.
2 fumbles and 1 interception.
And
3 turnovers the entire year.
They haven't.
I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, and not only that, they haven't turned it over since Lee threw an interception against Mississippi State. And if you remember that play, you were going, "What is he doing?" Like, it was a fluke interception. Like, you were sitting there like, why did he throw it up? He just kind of threw it up. The game was kind of in hand.
And I bet they never called that play since.
Oh, it's unbelievable. But, I mean, you go that, and then to top it all off, we're going to Alabama next anyway. But just to throw it on top of that, Alabama, until they turned the ball over 1 time against Tennessee, first turnover against an SEC team this year.
Yeah,
They don't turn the ball over.
That's they run the ball. They play defense. Safe passes. They don't make mistakes. It's not, and when you play defense like they do, and you don't turn the ball over, and you turn it, I mean, it's just not. It's not fair. That's what I mean. I know you guys will talk about Alabama and LSU, and that'll be probably next week. But I mean, that's what's going to win that game, right? Whoever turns it over, defense scores points, special teams, because neither one of these teams. I mean, they're just going to run the ball back and forth at each other, and if nobody turns it over, it might be 0-0. Right? I mean. It's just crazy. I
will say there's some news we did leave out. CBS coming up strong and going primetime with that game November 5th for LSU, Alabama. So, how
do you like being a Kentucky Ole Miss being able to play at 2:30 on ESPNU?
Yeah, I don't like South Carolina playing Arkansas at 7 on the road, same time. They could have scheduled that a little better, but yeah, that's awesome. It's night game, Alabama. I mean, the hype is going to be crazy.
And there were some backroom dealings with that, because LSU now, from my understanding, is going to get a night game next year for this matchup. So even CBS has worked it in so that game next year will be a night game. So yeah, they're giving up a little bit by having a night game at Alabama, but to get a night game in LSU guaranteed against Alabama, that's pretty much worth it. And big props to ESPN, because they had to come into the ball game too and say, yeah, we're willing to do something for the good of college football. Because I mean, that was their game, their time slot.
Yeah.
So,
and LSU is,
unbelievable. The thing about LSU that's so interesting to me is that they've got that. Like, when I look at Alabama and LSU, and I know we're not supposed to be really kind of getting off on this, but Alabama is they're kind of consistent. They do the same things. LSU has a little bit more risk reward to me.
No, I totally agree.
And because I think on defense, they're going to be ranked in the top 10, but they're going to turn the ball over. They're going to do those things. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of the battle between those two, because LSU, I'm sitting there going, 3 weeks ago, I don't think they can beat Alabama at Alabama. Now, I think it's just it's just going to be, they have an opportunity. They just have as good a chance as anything to just walk in there and dominate that game. I mean, they just keep surprising me. I mean, they're just getting better and better.
Well, you say that, you know what you get. And I kind of think of Alabama as vanilla and LSU might be Neapolitan. But, because you don't know which flavor you're going to get from LSU. But Alabama is as vanilla as we think they are. This season, they've had their bag of tricks. I mean, a couple of times they went where a fake punt on 4th down, or they went on a big play, Penn State on 4th down, and
come out against Tennessee and throw 8 straight times.
Yeah.
In the Arkansas, I mean that's. And look at the Arkansas game. They scored a punt return, fake something, interception for a touch. I mean, they had like 28 points on non-offensive plays.
But you don't think of Alabama having, those type of stats. You think of them as run the ball, have a efficient passer. But, they've gotten some of these big swings in momentum with some trickery that, might have been right out of Les Miles' Matt had. Who knows?
That's right.
You can call LSU risky, but 3 turnovers all year. That's the most amazing stat I've probably seen all year.
Well, the thing is, I think the risky part is more on the defensive side, because I think what you look at is they play a West Virginia on the road, and they give this weird, almost 500 yards of passing up, but they win the game by 29 points or 26. And so they just turn the ball over. They created big plays. they're dynamic as can be, and it's just going to be it's setting up to be just awesome.
They were definitely bend not break at that game, and it's. I wish we could find other things to talk about, but they're just so dominant. It's automatic for these teams, and the next team we're going to talk about is just as automatic, and that was Alabama. They took care of Drew's Volunteers.
So I missed the first half of this. Where did 6-6 come from? And if I'm Alabama, am I worried?
I'm going to tell you right now, it was. I don't know if Alabama's worried. I was actually having this conversation with an Alabama friend on Friday, and I was saying, one of these teams, LSU or Alabama, outside of their game that they play each other, they still have got to have that game where nothing goes right and they still pull it out. It's one of those deals. It's the Tennessee from 2 years ago where they blocked the field goal when Tennessee shouldn't have had a prayer to beat them. And it was working up that way. I mean, Tennessee played as good of a game as they played all year. I mean, they were able to run the ball a little bit on them.
At least the first half.
It was a field position game. Their defense played well. Alabama didn't do a lot of stuff. You could tell they were just flat. They were just non-interested. Nothing was really going right. And but the whole time I was sitting there, I was with my in-laws, and I was just telling my father-in-law, I was like, Nick Saban is going to choke somebody at halftime. That's what's going to happen. Some poor walk-on kid is fixing to get used as a sacrificial lamb, and they're going to just boat race them, and they did. When they came out, you knew it was over.
Yeah. And are we talking about Alabama or Tennessee? Because this goes right to the Dooley, and I'm a firm believer of this now. The more I see those, what do they do at halftime?
I've been batting this around, and I even sent you an email earlier this week, and I wish Drew was actually here so I could kind of get his Tennessee, and I'll bring this up at another podcast. But a lot of people that are trying to do this whole Dooley's on the hot seat. We don't like him. He can't do this. He can't coach. He's not the one. I'm looking the other day, and they've been outscored in his 11 losses as a coach in a year and a half, 132-28 in the third quarter. Now, I sit there and I go, well, that has nothing to do about depth, right? You're like, that's just adjustments. But then the more I started looking at it, I'm like, they came out and they said, okay, this is like the one thing we can do to play with Alabama. And we executed it right in the first half. I think their whole idea is, well, let's just hope they don't figure it out during the game. Because if they figure it out in the game, we have nothing else to go to.
Let's hope Nick Saban, the best coach in the country at making adjustments, doesn't do anything at halftime.
Right, exactly. But I don't think – the more I think about it, I don't know if they have another option, even if they switched. Even if they made an adjustment, I don't think they have the personnel to go, okay, we're going to do this. And that sounds stupid.
No,
but I
don't know. That's what I'm asking. What do we like?
That's the only thing I can come up with, because I'm sitting there going, they've got to do a better job, because depth's not the issue in the third quarter when you set for 20 minutes and you started out
at halftime.
But I just think, number one, their secondary is terrible. Absolutely terrible. And if I was South Carolina this week, I would drop back with Connor Shaw and I would throw it to Alshon Jeffrey 20 times and just let him go up.
So
I would just
Alabama
see what
just
happened.
Came out and threw it all over him.
They threw the first 8, I think it was 8 straight passes when they came out. They didn't run Trent Richardson until then. And they just, they came out, A.J. McCarron just started throwing the football and
decided to out-talent and out-depth.
They came out, they came out with a total change of attitude.
Yeah.
It was, we're fixing to take it to you, and they just rolled it up. And I think Tennessee had, 42 yards of total offense in the second half, and 10 of their 12 possessions were 3-and-outs.
Yeah. Well, and I'm with you on the depth thing, and then, Tennessee just kind of, but like you say, the third quarter, that's when a lot of games are won and lost, and there's something. I think it's both depth and what they're doing at halftime, which doesn't seem like much of anything. But if Alabama decides to come out and play, there's nothing Tennessee's going to do about it to stop them.
Right.
So.
Now, I wish Drew was here for this, because you're talking about the depth of Tennessee, and speaking of depth at quarterback, did anybody expect to see Parlardi come in and just?
You're talking about Worley?
Worley, I'm so sorry, Worley come in and lose a red shirt.
I don't. I mean, I was going
Not
kind of back and
surprised.
forth. I was totally surprised by it, and especially when he hands it off and the running back fumbles.
Yeah.
You know, and
On the
then
exchange.
he has to take the last possession. They're backed up in their end zone, so he didn't even attempt a pass.
No.
So I mean, it was kind of strange, and you know, it's kind of the thing that I'm kind of waffling back and forth on, because I think Tennessee's got a unique situation that, you know, a lot of people, I don't think people understand and I know Drew would be all excited about this, and I would love to have his conversations, but Tennessee has 5 playmakers, and 4 of them are hurt or not on the team. They literally had 5 difference makers, where a Florida, a Georgia, South Carolina, or some other team has got 15 of them. Or an LSU, Alabama, probably ought to put those 2 in there. But I mean, they've got 25. But the other thing is that they don't have a junior and senior class. And
What year is Sims?
Sims is a senior. But I mean, like you could go to a Tennessee fan and ask them, tell me a senior and a junior that's playing some type of minutes for you. I mean, they can't really name them because they just don't have them, because the 5 best all-world players that Kiffin had no longer on campus. You know, 13 of his recruiting class are gone. So it's kind of weird. They've got a situation where they don't have any upperclassmen. They're playing all these underclassmen, and the same thing's happening in other schools. I mean, Florida's playing 17 freshmen or whatever it is, but they've got seniors that are contributing. They've got juniors. So Dooley's in a situation where I've been kind of waffling back and forth on this whole quarterback thing. I don't understand what they thought Sims was going to do against Alabama and LSU. Like, he completes 38. They're saying they got a lot of data. With number one, you have no data on Worley, right? So basically what you're saying is that we got a lot of data that means that we believe Sims can't do anything, right?
Well, let me throw this out. And, you know, they have practice data too. And you can tell Sims can't do anything, right? And Sims is a senior. Worley's a true freshman. You can think about it this way of, hey, we're in a no-win situation right now. We know Sims isn't the answer to the future. Put Worley in there. Maybe we can, you know, catch lightning in a bottle like Bray a little bit. And then next year, if Bray's back, you could potentially redshirt Worley. Redshirt him the next year. Bray's probably he's going to be a redshirt sophomore. He might go pro.
He'll be a true junior.
True junior. Well, still third year out, right? So who knows where he might end up in the draft, and he might end up going pro. And now you got Worley, who's your next guy, who's got 5 games of experience now. So and I'm sure Dooley's thinking, hey, I'm going to recruit behind this kid anyway. It's almost like we can't do any worse than Sims, so why not put this guy in there and see what he can do?
But Worley can't. I mean, you can't redshirt your sophomore year unless it's a medical reason.
No, you can redshirt at any point.
You
can redshirt at any point, but the thing about it is that you may have to pull it in the 8th game. You know, I mean,
but if you're a coach, you can't be worried. That's my thing.
That's the whole thing. Yeah,
he's going. I got a guy who I know is not going to do anything. I got another guy who could do maybe the same. Maybe he'd be great. Throw him in there, see what happens.
But see, what I don't understand is why don't I don't know. I mean, if I'm going against South Carolina and their defensive line, do I want a senior that's actually been there and seen some stuff that maybe can get me in some run plays, and can hopefully keep me out of situations, or do I just want to put a total guy that's green and just throw him in as his first start as a freshman? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think the kid's as talented as Bray. Obviously, Bray's a pretty special kid from throwing the football standpoint. I hear he's a really bright kid. I heard that he was, academically, he's just a brain from that standpoint. And so, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, for me, I was just like, you're playing the number 1 and 2 team in the country. What do you expect? I just think burning that was interesting, but they got 5 games left. So, my thing is that if you're sitting there and you've got Bray as a sophomore and your plan was to redshirt the kid, and you got a senior quarterback there that can kind of patch things up for you through the end of the year, do you just hold on to that red shirt, and then you got 2 years of separation between the two?
Yeah, I mean, no coach would ever do that. if he thinks the other guy gives him a better chance to win, right? So there's something going on there. Blair's dying over here. No, I mean, there's something going on there where he's going to play Worley. And, one thing might be that, LSU and Alabama, those are throwaways. You got 5 games left. You still have a chance to get bowl eligible. So makes it look like Dooley's doing something, right? Throw the kid out there, see if he can beat South Carolina, get the fan base a little fired up and rattled, come out and see that kid play. I mean,
didn't you say you had some type of thought process behind this?
Oh, yeah. At first I was like, why would you do that? And my thought as I think through this is Dooley just doesn't like Sims. When it boils down to it, he's mad at his dad. Phil caused all that trouble there. Was it last year? Coming in saying, giving his 2 cents worth about everything. And his thought was, I want Worley to be my quarterback after Bray went down, but I'm not going to go send him out to the Lions and let him play LSU and Alabama. So let's let him sit here, maybe, do reps with the second team to get a little more game practice, and then bring him in maybe this game coming up. And, it was just such a bad loss. It's like, let's just do it now. And like you said, he's got 5 games left, so they're still bowl. They still got a shot to win a bowl if they can do it. I think he thinks that Worley's no worse than Sims, and he might not be. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't see where I see the problem is next year. I don't see Worley wanting to be a redshirt sophomore. I'm if I'm that kid, that's like I'm competing for the job.
Well, yeah. I mean, it depends on how. I mean, it'll be Bray's job.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, if Bray stays healthy, then
Bray
who knows?
comes
You might
out
be able
with the
to,
2 wide receivers. Worley's not getting on the field as long as he's healthy and he can play. He's
It
just
won't
going
be
to go the whole way. Now,
But
if Bray gets his thumb hurt in the 6th game, then you've got a guy there that's got playing that you can put him in and you can go.
Now let's just,
it won't be one of those things where they tell him at the start of the year he's redshirting. They'll just let it go. And if Bray stays healthy and Worley never gets in the game, then they'll slap a redshirt on him.
But now what happens if, I don't remember who Tennessee has the rest of this, the last 5 games. We can pull that up real quick. But what happens if they win 3 or 4 of those and under Worley? Now all of a sudden you've got a quarterback competition. And
that's a good thing.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
No, I mean, but next year, who's your guy? Bray is talented. He was leading the SEC in most of his categories, but now you got this guy coming in and replacing him, and basically help Tennessee get to a bowl game that most Tennessee fans had just chalked up to a lost season. They got South Carolina. I don't know. I don't think so. Middle Tennessee win. Arkansas
no.
Vanderbilt 50-50.
Up in the air.
Yeah, I would say pick 'em. Kentucky, Tennessee's got the advantage because it's when have they not beat Kentucky? I mean, let's face that. So I mean, there's two more wins and a third possible. So they're setting at 3 and 4. They still got a chance. So if they win 3 of those now, he comes in, catches lightning in a bottle, and all of a sudden upsets South Carolina and Arkansas. Now all of a sudden you've got a fan base. Who are they gonna get behind? That's going to be discussion on the Tennessee Vol Network. That's going to drive me crazy. I don't want to hear that.
Well, the number one thing that's got to happen is Dooley's got to win a game outside of Kentucky and Vanderbilt in the conference. I mean, he's got to beat a Florida, Georgia, a South Carolina, an Arkansas. He's got to get some win at some point. And if it lingers into next year, then, I mean, if you get all your players back and everything's going, I mean, I think you really can't know what you got until end of next year and you're ready to roll and figure out what's going on.
And that's the same thing I was thinking with Sims last year. I mean, you put him into the Wolves' den and let him play the first 6 games, which was the worst part of their season, and it's like, oh, we got a cakewalk the last 5. We should win these no matter what. Now let's.
So what you're saying is Dooley's trying to stick it to Phil Sims.
I think so. It's a conspiracy theory.
Good idea.
I like that.
I do too.
I mean,
I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
So that's.
I think Parcells would be too.
Would he?
Yeah.
Dooley's mom. Don't let her get in there.
We'll get at least we don't have a number listed for SEC Sports Roundtable. She'd probably be calling tomorrow. Well, I think that's the games for the week. Let's take our picks and look to next week. I know the week after is where everybody's looking forward to, but there's still a week of football. Looking at the schedule, there's a couple of decent games on the docket, and we're just going to go around the room, get our picks, get the rest of our roundtables picks, and get those put up online for us. If you haven't been to the website, definitely come take a look. Some of the guys out there, I think, know what they're talking about when you look at some picks. I don't know. I get every couple weeks I can brag on myself, and I had a pretty good week, 4-1 against the spread. 30-22-1 against the spread overall. I'm in second place behind Brett Young. He still had held on to it, but he had thoughts of Vegas in his mind because he did go 2-3. He had a losing record last week going into Vegas. I'm in third place. No, I'm looking at last week's.
You are now after my
yeah,
horrible week.
Yeah, after this week's numbers, I would be in second. Then followed by Marc Wisner here, who's really respectable numbers there. I mean, if you look at all these numbers, take out Trent Satterfield. Sorry, Trent, but before this week's games, you're 23-29-1, and I think you had a losing record again this week. So you can ignore his picks. But if you look at everybody else, we're all well above 500 on our picks. So some good knowledge out there for you, and we'll get right into it. And Mark, I'll start with you. Mississippi State's giving 10.5 at Commonwealth.
Oh man, we can't start with
you got
Blair.
the half in there.
And the half.
Oh man.
Well, I was going to, but then it would be Blair then me. Mississippi State, Kentucky. So
the 10.5 just put me over. Man, at Commonwealth, Kentucky coming off a big win. I got to go with Kentucky. Because they're playing. Other than South Carolina, which was kind of a little bit of a debacle, a lot of that was turnovers and bad offense, but they're playing good defense. State is not playing good offense. As long as Kentucky doesn't turn it over, give State easy scores, I think they can cover 10.5. And I think, they can stick with State if they can run the ball and they can, keep from turning it over and they can, get some stops on State. I don't think they're going to win the game, but, if they keep the momentum going, I think they cover that.
Blair?
Alrighty, I'm going with my Bulldogs, 10.5. I feel strong about this. I think it's a big game for both teams. Both of us have what we would consider 3 winnable games left. I would think Mississippi State needs 3 to get to 6, and we got Arkansas and Alabama as the other 2. So, but I think this is the one. I mean, we've had the week off. I think we got Tyler Russell in there. I think our defense is playing a lot better, and I think my man Jonathan Banks is going to take a pick to the house. He's only got 5 on the year, 3rd in the nation, and number 1 in pass deflection. So I think I like the way our defense is playing. I think I think y'all are going to get back to your old offense, and I think we're going to actually roll up a couple of touchdowns.
This is Russell's first road game?
First one that he'll probably start, yeah.
Well, I'm going to take Kentucky. I'm like you, Mark. I don't know if they're going to win this one. I'd like to see them win it, but 10.5, that half, just put it over for me.
That's why I added it on there so you could pick Kentucky.
Talk to Danny Sheridan about that. These went straight from USA Today. And I think the key for Kentucky, and I mentioned this way early in the podcast, is that they have to have an effective offense, and it's not an offense that has to score every time they get the ball. I'm not looking for them to just score at will, but they have to give the defense time to rest and get some legs and let them keep some legs. If they do that, they have a shot to keep it close. Commonwealth is a fun place to go, listen to a game. We're going to have a blackout. That's the first blackout Kentucky's had. So the black unis are coming out. So there's going to be a lot of excitement up in Commonwealth. I think that really says how big of a game they think this might be. You say there's 3 winnable games out there. Well, those winnable games has to be, of the 5, Mississippi State, Mississippi, Vandy, Georgia, right, and Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say that we have a shot against Tennessee, but every time I thought we've had a shot at them, you go to 6 overtimes or something ridiculous. Being
a Mississippi State and a Kentucky fan like we are, this game falls always around the 7th or 8th game. And for both teams, it is always a critical game. I mean, it's been a very evenly played game in the last decade.
And this is a team, I mean, that we each have on our schedule. You're our West opponent.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's our permanent game, and it seems like it's always one that can either catapult the next team into a couple of wins to get to that 6-7 bowl win type of season or not. So it's a critical game for both of us. And like we talked about earlier, I mean, Dan Mullen's biggest thing this week was talking about the turnovers that Kentucky's had, that they got a good, efficient defense, but they just been on the field too much, turnovers. So I think it'll be an interesting game.
Yeah, no, I'd love to say that Kentucky could pull out the win. I don't. If you had to make me put up that, I don't think I could take Kentucky. But with 10.5, I'm going to go with the Wildcats on that.
Yeah. I will agree with Blair. State's playing some pretty good defense, and but this will be a first win for both of them. Are 0 for in the SEC right now, right?
Yeah, one of us will have a win in the SEC. The other thing is that we're going to see 4 of the top 7 tacklers in the SEC in this game. Number 1 and 2 at Kentucky, which is Trevathan and Guy. And then we'll actually have
when your defense stays on the field for 80% of the time. It's easy to get a lot of tackles.
Right, and then State's got the number 3 and 7. I just saw that today, so got to like those linebackers getting to the tackles.
All right, well let's go on to the next game. I've got the cocktail party, and we're not affiliated with anybody, so we can call it what it really is. Georgia, Florida. Florida is the home team this year. By name only. So, Blair, won't you give us we're going to call it a pick'em because as of this morning when we sent out the picks, there was no line listed. So we're going to make it easy. I think there's actually a line been listed by Vegas as of now, but we're going to just call this a pick'em game.
Do we know if Brantley's going to be able to play? He's in.
He's
practicing.
Every indication is Brantley's playing.
I'm going to go with Florida. And the only reason
I like it,
I just think that I don't know, Georgia. They could be waking up by the Vandy episode last week and 2 weeks ago, and those types of things, but they didn't play very well. So I for some reason, I'm just thinking that Muschamp, however you say his name, is just gonna be fiery on the sideline.
I'm gonna take Georgia on this one. I think they both had the bye week this week. So, I mean, it's like Alabama and LSU. They both have the week off to prepare for each other. And Georgia's just, to me, the team to beat in the East right now. They've had a couple of rough losses there at the beginning with South Carolina and Boise State. But after that, you looked at the schedule. It's a winnable schedule. And I think that they've got sights set on trying to compete for the East, and they're looking for South Carolina to stumble somewhere else along the way and be able to take that crown. So they're gonna come in excited about that. I don't think Florida has that option in their arsenal. So with that being the deciding factor, just what they have to play for, I'm gonna go with Georgia.
Yeah. So this is it's interesting because nobody talks about the East because the East is kind of terrible, but. This is the East weekend, right? You have Florida, Georgia. Florida loses, they're done. I mean, they have an outside shot still to win the East. This is a game Georgia's got to win, right? So I'm going to go with Georgia as much as it pains me because as a South Carolina fan, I want Florida to win this game more than anything. But, Georgia, the thing people don't realize is the same last year is they're like top 7, 6 something in defense. I mean, their defense is solid. And, I'm still not sold that Florida can do anything on offense outside of – the two guys, Rainey and Demps, and I don't even know if Demps is healthy, but, Brantley coming back, that's good, but I don't, against good defenses, he hasn't done much of anything. So, I got to go with Georgia just because they're playing good defense. I think Florida is going to be able to, stop them, but, Georgia's better on defense. To me, they're better on offense. They're probably better on special teams or about even. I'd love to see Florida man up and win it, but I think Georgia's just a better team right now.
If
they're playing in Jacksonville. And it's just, there's something about it that Florida loves. And I think Muschamp has just got this. I think Georgia's a better team. And I think if you just put them on some other field, but I think
some other neutral site.
I hope you're right.
But I just think for some reason, Muschamp's going to have something to do with this game, and I think he's just going to. I think they're just going to pull out all the stops. I mean, they know that they're dead, and Georgia's kind of playing along where they've gotten that 6th win in a row type of deal. Where, hey, are they going to play tight if it gets into a little bit, knowing that they've got just that one chance to get to the SEC tournament?
Yeah.
I mean, SEC.
Well, great thing about college, right? Another elimination game. Yeah. I mean, Florida is. Both of them are literally playing for their life. Now, Georgia could lose this and still win the East if South Carolina stumbles, but they both have to win this game, basically.
Well, that's my question, though. Really, isn't Florida pretty much eliminated? They've got 3 losses already. Now, none of them are in the East, but, they got losses to Alabama, LSU, and Auburn. If they do lose this one now, they're definitely done. That's 4 losses in the SEC.
Well, that's true. They would have to hope Georgia loses again, right? Which probably
because Georgia's one of their losses came to Boise State out of conference. So
it just keeps them mathematically alive.
Well, mathematically.
But hey, another thing, maybe Florida's got nothing to lose, so throw it all out there.
And that's what now. So I'm thinking that they've got nothing to lose but play spoiler.
Yeah.
And so now they have something to play for, and so
I mean, who's to say that?
I'm not going to change my pick, but that's also out there.
But just
to
throw that out there as the 3 losses.
Yeah.
What about this scenario? They beat Georgia, they beat South Carolina. South Carolina loses to Arkansas and Florida, and Georgia loses to Auburn. You got a 3-way tie with 3 losses.
That's what I'm saying. Is Florida still in it?
Florida's still in it. This puts them completely out of it. But to say that couldn't happen is.
Watch out, Vanderbilt.
I mean,
it's the East, right? I mean, 3 losses, won it last year. So,
I mean, if Georgia loses Florida, do you think that they could lose to Auburn? I do, because I think if they lose this game, there's a lot of wind that goes out from that.
Yeah.
I think if they take a loss before they get to the SEC championship game, because of what's going on with Rick and what people are doing, and I think South Carolina's got a tough game at Arkansas, and then Florida's got to play South Carolina at South Carolina. So there's all kinds of scenarios that can happen, and who knows what happens with a 3-way tie.
Hey, the other thing I'll throw out, both of them had byes last week, right?
Yes.
So it'll be interesting, right? Charlie Weiss, offensive genius, see if he comes out with some wrinkles, some interesting stuff. But I'm really looking forward to it because neither team is great, but I mean, it's Georgia, Florida, and it's a big game for both of them.
Well, now we're going to go look at Auburn at home against Ole Miss. They're giving 10.5. Ole Miss surprised me with as many points as they were able to score last week, but I just don't believe in Ole Miss. And for that reason, I'm going to take Auburn.
Nice, decisive.
Yeah. I'll make this short. I'm going to pick against Ole Miss every week.
I love it. I'm going with Auburn as well. I don't have a lot of confidence in Auburn, but it's at Auburn, and I really don't have a lot of confidence in Ole Miss. I think they gave their best effort last week, and I think that McCaleb and Dyer, they're just going to run.
Well, Auburn still has a shot at a decent bowl game. I mean, they're not going to compete for the West, but I mean, they still have a good shot at a decent.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see him start playing Kyle Frazier a lot. Like, start getting stuff ready for next year. But I mean, Auburn's a much better team than Ole Miss. If Ole Miss shows up and plays, they can cover and give them a run for their money. But Ole Miss is just teetering, right? And it's either they'll show up and lose by 3 or 7, or they'll get beat by 40. I assume Auburn's going to come out and play Auburn football, which is run it, don't make mistakes, and I think they'll cover.
I mean, they've got 5 wins. They're guaranteed a 6 because they've got Ole Miss, Georgia, then Samford and Alabama. So Samford's their win. So they're going to have 6 wins for sure. So now you've got Mississippi, Ole Miss, and Georgia to try to build on that to have a decent bowl game. So so now you're trying to play for Chick-fil-A or something as opposed to Music City. So that's a lot to play for. That gives Auburn something to play for, where Ole Miss, they don't have a lot to play for. Next game, we're going to go to you, Mark. I've got, how fitting, South Carolina giving 4 at UT.
I actually came here tonight. I was going to pick Tennessee, but I think I'm taking South Carolina. All her negative Tennessee talk has talked me into taking South Carolina. So, but reason why is, Justin Worley's a South Carolina guy. He was, I don't know, a 3-star recruit or something. He's not, I'll eat my words if he does. He's not going to come out and be Tyler Bray and light the world on fire. They're going to come out and they're going to run the football. And if they can't run the football, South Carolina is going to wipe the field with them. And I think Tennessee will be able to come out. South Carolina's a little soft in the middle. The tackles and linebackers haven't been great. Teams have been able to run the ball, especially up the middle on them. I look for Tennessee just to come out and run Torrent Pool as much as they can. If they have success, they can beat South Carolina, no doubt about it. If they come out and they can't run the ball and they let that defensive line get all over Worley, it's going to be ugly because, if anything, South Carolina, number one in the nation in takeaways, forcing fumbles and interceptions. A lot of those are defensive ends hitting quarterbacks and causing fumbles. If South Carolina gets out to a lead or Tennessee can't run the ball and Worley's out there slinging it, it could get ugly because they got a lot of playmakers on that defense. And on South Carolina's offense, who knows? They're playing their fifth-string tailback. Connor Shaw, has been managing the game. The offensive line has been a disaster the last few weeks. They just need to come out, get some first downs, keep the defense off the field, keep them fresh, score some points, hope the defense gets some turnovers, and, end up winning by 7-10 points like they have been. So 4's a lot the way South Carolina's playing offense, to be honest, but I think the defense might turn Tennessee over a little bit and, they win by 7 or 10.
I'm exactly the same way. I think that they're going to turn the ball over. South Carolina's defense is good, and they're kind of risk reward as well. I mean, you can gash them up a little bit, but I mean, we watched them in person 2 weeks ago. So I mean, their defensive ends, that poor kid. I mean,
yeah. Let's see what they call holding this week.
Yeah,
there's my complaint as a South Carolina fan. Whatever.
And I think that, and I think Spurrier, I mean, I think he's going to go, hey, man, we're just going to throw it, 15, 16 times to Alshon Jeffrey. And, that's all he's going to do. I mean, I just literally would toss it up to him 20 times this game and make him go grab 6 catches, and even if you throw it to him 10 more times than you need to, because their defense, their secondary is awful, and they're just getting huge plays on them. So I just see South Carolina beating them way by more than 4.
Yeah, I think the line's too low, and I expect to probably see a little movement this week to make that a little more aggressive. But I'm going to take South Carolina as well. I was pulling up a stat for you. You said UT's going to have to run the ball. Well, Torrent Pool's already had 116 attempts and only gotten 462 yards. He's not an effective runner this year. Yeah. They're not giving him holes. We've already talked about their quarterback issues. The offense has got some problems on Tennessee, and it's not going to get solved against South Carolina because they've got a pretty good defense.
Yeah. And they're starting true freshman guard, and they replace that. No, I'm with you. They haven't run the ball. That's what makes me nervous is the first half of Alabama. I'm going, wait, they ran the ball in Alabama? Because that's the only way they beat South Carolina if they can come out and run the ball. And
I don't think that's going to happen. So, I was expecting his attempts to be a little bit higher and his yards to be even a little bit lower than that because I know Tennessee has not been very effective this year running the ball.
Yeah. And while we're talking about turnovers, I mean, South Carolina in the first, 6 games had 24 turnovers that they forced on defense. Yep. Something ridiculous. Number 1 in the country at the time. But they had Garcia that threw 42 interceptions in the first 5 games.
I think South Carolina, they're number 1 in the SEC, maybe number 1 in the nation in pass defense. Now, granted, they haven't played any teams that can actually throw the football, but, true freshman quarterback, again, all comes down to running the ball because Tennessee, and their pass defense was awful last year. They're playing more man. They've got athletes out on the corners, good safeties. If Tennessee can't run the ball, it's going to be a field day for that defensive line.
All right, the next game up is Blair going to let you kick us off here. Arkansas is giving 10 at West End and Vanderbilt.
I'm actually going to take Arkansas. I think this game, if I'm not mistaken, is starting at in the evening.
I believe you're correct. I think it's the ESPNU game.
Yeah, and I think Arkansas is little night owls. And so they don't like getting up at 11 a.m. and playing. So I think they start off the game very well. But I like the way Vandy's playing, but I think Arkansas is going to have too much offensive power for them. I think 10 points is going to be pretty easy.
I'm going to take Arkansas as well. Last week was a fluke for them. They didn't have their offense together. I think that was their one squeaker that they were able to pull out and win. So I agree. I think they're going to win that one pretty handedly. 10's I'm expecting 17 is what, if I had to give you a number out there that I think they could win it by. Did you see what time that game was while we were looking here? It is not. It is a 12-20. It's an 11-20 game. It's the it's the SEC game. So that 11-21 kickoff. I don't think that's going to change things. Because if anything, that's going to bode better because even fewer Vanderbilt fans are going to show up at that time. And at least Kentucky has fans that show up for pretty good amount of their tickets. Vanderbilt's season ticket numbers look pretty good, but the majority of those are the opposing teams. So with that being an 11-21 game, I still don't think that's an issue. I'm
bucking the trend. Go Doors. I have no reason to pick them other than I just love what Vandy's doing. I think, their pass defense, overall defense, the way they're creating turnovers, getting interceptions, they can get Arkansas rattled a little bit, just like Ole Miss did. They can keep it close. Everything tells me you guys are right and that Arkansas wins this by 3 touchdowns. But, let's hope, I'm going to pick Vandy and hope they can come out and, give them a scare, especially with South Carolina going to Arkansas next weekend. I'd love to see them have struggled 2 weeks in a row. But, Vandy's game plan, and they're playing well. So hopefully Ole Miss, like you said, showed some people something.
Well, and Franklin has, spent time in the spring looking at some of his games and actually practiced for those. I mean, even Army, they threw in some wrinkles in practice over the summer just to prepare for Army. So, it's not like that they've not looked at this game, back in July to figure out some things to try to plan for Arkansas. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't have some stuff pulled, put away to try for it, that you haven't seen, some new wrinkle to throw out there.
And you can run the football a little bit on Arkansas too, which is exactly what Vandy's going to try to do. So, we'll see. I think you guys might be right, but I'm going to pick Vandy.
Well, that is all the games. We only have 5 games. We have another 2 teams off this week. That's LSU and Alabama to prepare for their big showdown November 5th. So lots to talk about next week on that for sure. I know, I was expecting this to be a shorter podcast.
Got you guys going about Kentucky and State.
I tell you what. So, that could be it. We did go off a little bit on a couple of things, but it was a good podcast, and I want to thank everyone for listening in. Find us on SECSRT.com. Find us on Twitter at SECSRT. We're on Facebook at SEC Sports Roundtable. You can find me personally at P. Shane Bailey. That's my Twitter. If you want to follow what I have to say personally, you're more than welcome to do that. Not a whole lot of football talk goes on my personal one. I try to, direct that more to the SEC. So if you just want to know the state of technology or what's happening in Franklin, Tennessee, check me out. But otherwise, I'm a pretty boring person on Twitter otherwise with that. But, as we close the shop every week, we throw it around the horn and let everyone just have open mic if there's something you guys want to talk about. Blair, we'll start with you.
I'm just excited to get back playing football this week. State head off last week, so I'm interested to see. I'm always looking forward to the Kentucky games. It's always a good game, so looking forward to it. And my Twitter handle is at Blair Smiley, SMYLY. I don't think I've actually ever even tweeted out once, so don't have a lot to actually say. I'm more of a follower.
There you go.
Yeah. You're better than me. I have no Twitter account. I think I'm the only person left. So, no, I was going to say the same thing as Blair. Good to have football. And the other thing I'd say is, when you hear people talking nationally, and I'm going to be a homer for a second, nobody is talking about South Carolina winning the East. It's like they're already out of it, right? And, this weekend's big because, 4 points. They're not getting any respect with the offense and Lattimore out. They probably don't deserve to get any respect. So they need to come out and win a couple football games, right? So they control their own destiny, and every game's winnable from here on out. So, like you said, good to get back on the field. And, again, as you get further in the season, every week is huge for bowl eligibility, for winning a conference, national, you name it. It's a playoff every week.
And Spurrier can get Ric Flair back in the,
get a little pep talk.
Yeah, get a little pep talk.
Well, I'll close by thanking everyone that stayed with us this long, up to the hour and a half mark through this podcast. So we appreciate you listening, and if you still are, we hope you are. Also, that's a great thing about football is, there's only 12 games, so every loss can make or break your season. It's just, that's why it's so exciting, because you just don't know what's going to happen from week to week. You saw Oklahoma, their chances at a national championship just get completely ruined this week. And
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Let's not talk about that. Clemson keeps climbing the ladder.
Clemson's got South Carolina,
Clemson's a debacle. They're going to lose. You know it.
They've got
to lose
another
at Georgia Tech this weekend.
I was about to say they've got another tough game ahead of that. But worst case scenario, they've got South Carolina as the last game of the season. Don't you all always play those guys?
Yeah.
So I mean, they don't have an easy schedule left. I mean, they've got a loss out there. You look at the 7 or 8 teams that are undefeated. You've got 2 in the SEC. One of those is going to lose. Yep. I think Oklahoma State is going to not be able to make it. I think Oklahoma is going to seek their revenge. So now you're going to have both of the teams in the Big 12 knocked out of it. I think Clemson doesn't have it in them. They've got a loss somewhere down the road. You got Stanford. Who knows what they've got in the Pac-12?
They got a tough schedule.
They got Oregon and USC.
Yeah.
So and even though USC's not bowl eligible, they're a pretty good team this year.
I'll go ahead and mark it down that y'all actually heard this on the podcast since we're kind of rounding about. But Alabama and LSU will both lose a game before the end of the year.
Well,
one of them's going to lose, but the other one's going to lose as well.
Now I'll go back to the Arkansas.
He's got State over Bama.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
Well, listen to this is my scenario. You were talking about a 3-way race for the East. All right. Alabama gets beat by LSU. LSU faces Arkansas the last game of the season. Arkansas beats LSU. Now you have a 3-way tie for the West, and with one loss. So
it's good stuff.
That's great. I mean, we throw that in at the hour and a half. Think about if that can come into play. There's still a lot of football left. There's 4 more weeks of football before you get to that kind of game. But you're looking at all the teams. We're looking at the BCS and who's got a shot. There's a lot of people at the top of that BCS standings that's set up for a loss somewhere down the way. So
now you're the Wisconsin and Oklahoma losing. I mean, the whole thing is because now you looked on the list. There's 12 one-loss teams. It's insane. So if you get down to the one-loss teams, you're talking about national champ. I mean, it's the next 2-3 weeks. It's just gonna reshuffle all over the place.
The only real team I think has a shot at going undefeated is Boise State.
Yeah. And that's a done deal.
So, I mean, what happens then? They're sitting there as the only undefeated team, and then everybody else has a loss. Now talk about a cluster. It's gonna be great talk for these podcasts and talk radio coming up over the next few weeks. So I'm excited about that. But that's my 2 cents on that, and we'll probably talk more about that as we get to it. But thank you all for listening in, and we're going to call this one wrapped up. Thanks.